Saad Qadri. Mr. Qadri, can you confirm that you can hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank
Great,
you.
thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, 1 minute, we get another minute. Oh, thank you so much. Good evening. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 to order. Our first item is public comments. Do we have anyone that has signed up?
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. At this point, we have two people wishing to give comment, Dakota Rash, followed by John Culver.
Okay, so let me do that next. Okay. We welcome our community members to the Planning Commission's meeting. In this forum, the Planning Commission does not engage or dialogue with the public. The primary role of the Planning Commission is to listen. We will hear from our on-site guests first, followed by our virtual guests. If you are present, please sign in. If you are online, please use the raise hand feature now if you wish to speak. All guests must address their comments to the chair and the city planning commissioners. The clerk will acknowledge your request and call your name when it is your turn. Your time will start when we confirm that we can hear you. Due to time constraints and to provide fair time to all community members, we must limit each speaker to 3 minutes. We will not split your time with others or reset your time. Any comments regarding the issue being, well, there is no issue being heard in a public hearing tonight, so let's move on from that. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the Planning Commission or clerk in advance. Materials submitted after the meeting will be provided to the commission and will be part of the record. This meeting is being recorded, and we appreciate that you are taking the time to express your perspective. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Dakota Rash, followed by John Culver.
All right, thank you. Can y'all hear me? Perfect. I see my time started. Dakota Rash, good evening. Lake Forest Park. I appreciate the time and consideration. I have two broad comments tonight on some staff response to some comments I sent regarding the climate action element. And I supplemented that with an email earlier that I hope you all can consider. So first, response to my call for a faster net zero timeline. I do appreciate the flexibility I'm starting to see in that consideration. I really am heartened that that is being responded to. However, I am less comfortable when I see language inserted like as or if possible and as feasible. So right now in India and Mexico, there are gigantic heat waves happening. Over 100 people have died. And so I share that with you today. That is very distressing to have as context for while we sit here having caused, not necessarily just Kenmore, but developed nations having caused a majority of this crisis. It is, I think, almost verging on unintentional immorality to consider fixing this problem as feasible when people are literally out there suffering and dying. Next, I want to highlight public comment number 2 and response number 2. I feel like the staff response on this one largely did not address my concern, as I was highlighting something I did not see in current policy. So I'd like to share the heart of it again. The purpose of this comment was prioritizing ecological uses of land. I think for the past few hundred years on this continent, we've had a largely successful in some ways, but not long-term sustainable experiment of doing whatever we want with land, whenever we want with land, regardless of what the land is telling us should be done there in terms of wetland uses and stream uses and erosion and floodwater. What we need to do if we want to have long-term viability on this land is reprioritize it as a partner, not just something to be managed. For too long, there's been a pyramid with us at the top, maybe animals in the middle, and then land. We have prioritized this thing that is supporting this pyramid as something that we can do whatever we want with. And I think there's been demonstrations on this continent long before people from Europe arrived that we can do things differently. We can live in harmony with land. But to do that, we need to not treat development and use as a default. We will still need to build things and we will still need to grow because our population is expanding and it's going to be migrating to areas like Kenmore. So we do still need to find ways that we can build, but we need to do so with the ecological values of land in mind, and we need to make sure that where we can and where it is ecologically important to do so, we actually deprioritize building and reprioritize giving back to nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Dakota. And our next person is?
Mr. Culver.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm John Culver. I want to commend the city and the Planning Commission for putting together what feels like a good inaugural guide on this important work, but I also want to emphasize we are behind on this important work. Beyond even scientific consensus, we've perhaps finally reached media and zeitgeist consensus at this point. As Washington Post put it the other day, an appropriate level alarm and still gentle delivery, a little panic might be in order. Not the paralyzing sort, as the author says, but rather our species evolved panic as a kind of superpower to avoid being eaten. My challenge to you tonight, put that superpower to work. Use this consensus as a mandate. Let it be your bully pulpit to pursue more ambitious goals. Kenmore frequently touts itself as a city that punches above its own weight. And folks, climate is going to be the fight for our lifetimes for the rest of our lifetimes. And what we do today will set the pace for what must come. Specifically, I would call for tighter feedback cycles rather, in our assessments. 4 to 5 years means we really only get one bite at the apple before 2030. When we talk about sufficient capacity and resources, I think we could stand to be more explicit, even if still talking about round figures. Interpreted understandings of what constitute one person's interpretation of sufficient or adequate feels a little too squishy. I'd like to see stronger language around greenhouse gas emissions. Elimination should be the goal, and we should start using that language if we're serious about getting there. And plan on more aggressive goals in the future. It might sound circular, but I think it sets a good intent for adaptive and responsive approaches. Strike while the iron is hot, Planning Commission. That's all I got tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you, John. We appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else?
We do have one virtual comment, Chris Olson. Mr. Olson, can you hear us?
Hello. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
All right. Apologies, I'm calling on my ride home from work, so I'm still on the bus. I'm here to voice my support for Dakota Rash and emphasize that we can and should be prioritizing environmental zoning, thinking about the context of the space, thinking about the history of the land and what can be done to improve that land. For instance, the park, Twahadis, was a remediation project. It worked to help bring back some of the function that the land used to have for salmon and other species in the area, especially on the waterfront. And more of that work is important. Kenmore, I think, has pushed quite a bit of that. And that's an important thing that has been done, but there's more that can and needs to be done. So I'd like to continue seeing an aggressive approach on this, where we are not using language that lets property owners or other individuals that have had these impacts continue to have negative impacts on the surrounding property and environment, especially with future density increases and additional people moving to the region. We're going to see more demand put on what infrastructure and land uses we already have. And so as places redevelop to meet this demand, we need to ensure that that redevelopment occurs in a manner that is consistent and considers the environment as a piece of that demand and function. It's one of the things that I hear people repeatedly talk about that they like having in Kenmore is this access to nature. And so having, amenity strips and connected environment, connected, gosh, I'm forgetting the word right now, but effectively connected regions in the environment that allow for wildlife to move seamlessly without needing to traverse, the urban built environment as opposed to the natural environment is quite important. Overall, I've been happy with what you guys have done. So this is just a piece of additional support and a voice to continue pushing for the policies. Anyways, thank you, Corridors. Tracy just messaged me now. Regardless, a little stressful talking to you all from the bus. So I'm gonna get going, but thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Chris, for your comments.
We do have one more person that's raised their hand, Stacy Valenzuela.
Good evening, Stacy Valenzuela. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you. Let's get real. There is no way that the emissions from the asphalt plant and cement plant are lower than transportation greenhouse gas emissions. They are major contributors, as all industry is. Now that we have testing, that should come forward. I know that the chart here seems to indicate that transportation is over 38%, 41% of other uses, but there are several organizations that actually show that the industry is much higher, and that seems to be like a dirty little secret of greenhouse gases. I think we need to investigate further before we just pass along what King County is saying to support the EV vehicle use and funding. And I think we owe it to Kenmore residents to make sure what is causing the highest amount of greenhouse gases historically in our area. what is causing the particulate matter and make healthier air, land, and water choices. And we can do that with your help. You guys have helped write a lot of great policy, and I hope you continue that with the climate plan. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Stacy.
There are no additional comments.
Okay, so we'll move from public comments to the approval of minutes. Is there any discussion or comments on the minutes from last meeting? Hearing none, then the minutes shall be approved as written by unanimous consent. The next item is the climate action element, and there is a staff memo. And I believe the staff are coming up now. So who will be leading off tonight?
I'm going to turn it over to Nina and Richard, but just the goal for tonight is to see if you can get to a recommendation on the cap. Nina's going to go over public comment, and you have the draft. So she's basically be saying if you have any questions. Turn it over to Nina and Richard.
Debbie covered everything in her intro, so I think Nina's just getting it pulled up. You good?
Yes. So we'll go ahead and start with the document that had the public comments summarized on that. That should be in your agenda packet. Just want to know if there are any questions or comments on any of that content.
Hearing none, seeing none, you may move on.
All right, in that case, we will move to the draft of the climate action element. Planning Commission has received the most recent draft of that. We have moved all approved edits from previous meetings to red. And there are blue line edits. Those are any additional that have been added since the last meeting. Currently, there is only one area of the document in which there are blue line edits, and that would be page 12, line 4.
Go ahead if you'd like to explain that.
This one is addressing the public comment that mentions passive design in addition to green building standards. This is simply adding that additional language in there as a point of clarification.
Is that the only spot?
Yes, that should be the only additional edit that we have added. We have also in that document highlighted the reduce and eliminate language as requested. This is done in the sections that we've drafted and not in any references to existing plans. So this would be anything new that has been policies that are added into this element. If there's any discussion or commentary about that, we can address that at this time.
Well, we're going to move through the document from the beginning so that we make sure all the commissioners have an opportunity to speak to anything else that they wish to speak to. Myself organized here. Okay, so we are on page 1. And so we're just gonna go, so we're gonna do page 1 through 3 right now. Any comments? Okay, then we're gonna go from page 4. Page 4 through 6. Commissioner Benezinski.
This is a question for staff. I don't know if it'll be Debbie or Richard, but could you please remind us all about how we came to the numbers in that chart? Emissions numbers.
On page 4, the greenhouse gas emissions inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the emissions that we calculated from 2019 data throughout the city. So we compiled data from a variety of sources and just for that calendar year. And then we tallied up emissions for both the community, and then there's a separate subset of city operations emissions as part of that. That was done separately, but included in this particular graph.
So the emissions came from direct measurements from our community. No, they weren't like hypothetical.
It's I mean, a variety of sources. So, where we have direct measurements, for instance, electricity use from PSC, natural gas use, transmission data that they can provide, we can get that from them. Some of the, where we don't have direct data, we worked with a consultant and other tools available through ICLEI and tools developed through partnerships we have with K4C in King County to kind of use industry standards on about, estimating emissions in some of those sectors. And I don't know if you have, Nina's actually working on our update together, our 2021 emissions right now. So she's probably a little fresher in her memory.
Right, so I'll just say that with the 2019 data, this is as, we're using localized data as much as possible. There are certain areas where some estimations are made, such as vehicle traffic. That's something that's really hard to quantify. So that is done through traffic modeling, and that is done through Puget Sound Regional Council. So, we are pulling from a variety of sources. We get direct information from PSE, from our waste hauler, all of that. So we are pulling actual hard numbers for these emissions, and it is run through the ICLEI dashboard, which is used by a variety of communities across the country and worldwide. And so there are factor sets that, you input a number and they're able to quantify that in what that means in, equivalent of carbon dioxide. So yes, we're using sort of the best industry standards for that.
This is Commissioner Cadre. So this data is from 2019. How likely is it that we could get more updated numbers? I mean, is it possible for us to get more updated? We're in 2023 now. It's almost 4 years ago. Are we able to get more updated numbers?
Yeah, so the plan, we'll be updating this every 2 years. So we'll be updating with 21, and then as soon as we wrap up 23, we'll be updating those numbers probably spring next year. So we are a little bit behind, but we just got staff on board to start helping work on this, about 6 weeks ago. So we're just getting caught up. But yeah, every 2 years, our plan will be to continuing measuring our greenhouse gas emissions and see how we're doing on our targets.
Thank you.
Commissioner Manzinski.
I just have one follow-up question to my suite of questions just before. So do we have exact data from our community for the industry, or are we also using kind of models and estimates?
As far as, say, electricity generation, that sort of thing, on the industry side, that is all direct data. If you're looking at, again, transportation, that is a little more modeled. It really just depends what aspect you're looking for within sort of the industry side.
Okay, thank you so much. That was a great explanation.
Commissioner Lutzis.
Just to follow up to Commissioner Kadri's question. So I know we only got staff on board about 6 weeks ago, and it sounds like you guys are all working to get those 2021 numbers up. But just curious, is there maybe an ETA on when those numbers will be finalized? Again, no rush, no pressure, just kind of curious where we're at right now.
It is a process just because we are waiting on some data from a couple different partners, but we are hoping to have an update this fall, and that would include a report and sort of comparison of those previous numbers as well.
Thank you.
If I could just add that this is just a snapshot in time in terms of data. We could spend all our time kind of redoing all the data all the time. So the point of this is a snapshot that was taken in 2019, and the implementation measures do recognize that the data will be updated. And then the next time we do a periodic update of the climate action element, we will then refresh those numbers. But we don't have to be constantly chasing those numbers to be accurate. This is a snapshot.
But
No, I was
would
just
point out
curious.
It is an
Yeah.
important snapshot because this sets our baseline. So this is what we'll be referencing all of our updates back to this one.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments? I personally think that there should be some sort of a footnote indicating that this is 2019 data that's being referenced in the comp plan here. So it does not confuse the public thinking that it's 2021, 2023, 2022, and provides a clear anchor for what the numbers are. Can we do that? How would you propose some simple language?
We could simply add that into the caption, but we could also make a note that this is part of a data set that does update every 2 years.
Okay, so so we can do this tonight.
We'll just, on figure 1, we'll just add 2019 right underneath it.
Right under,
It'll say figure 1, 2019 Kenmore GHG emissions inventory chart.
okay. Has it been moved?
So moved.
This 2019 edition on before Kenmore on figure 1, it's been moved and seconded to add that. Is there any objection? Hearing none, it's approved. That is a red. Okay, we're going through page 7. I know there was some discussion about figure 2. Is everybody happy about how that looks and how it's explained? Okay, nothing there. Is there anything else to page 7? Okay, so now we're off to page 8 through 10 pages. I see now we're getting to the yellows, the reduce, and page 10, there's none on that, but there's some on page 8 and 9. So is there any desire to make changes from reduce to eliminate or some other Verbiage. Commissioner Banczynski.
I read through all of these instances again this past week, and I feel like in light of the crisis that we're in, when we are stating our goals, I favor the use of eliminate. I think, so on goal 2, where it says prioritize resilient and equitable land use planning to reduce GHG emissions from building and infrastructure development, I would favor as a goal to eliminate them. I do feel like in some of the objectives and policies, it makes sense to keep reduce, but for our goals, again, for goal 2 in particular, I would favor eliminate.
While you're at it, do you have any others that you want to point out on pages 8 and 9 that you would like to propose to be changed?
I would say the same for goal 3. Instead of reduce GHG emissions from the transportation sector to mitigate the impact of climate change, I would favor eliminate. Again, and this is I'm just in the goals. I think the other instances of them on these pages in the policies and objectives, I am fine with them reading reduce for various reasons.
Are there any other concerns of the plan commissioners with regard to changing any of the yellow reduces? The hearing has been moved and seconded that the word reduce in goal 2 and goal 3 be changed to eliminate. Any further discussion? Hearing none. If there's no objection, the amendments for the line 26 on page 9 and line 22 on page 8 is approved unanimously. Okay. All right, so now we're off to pages 11 through 13. Including, we have, and we already discussed the blue. Is there any objection to the blue that's being added there? Okay, so that's good. And Commissioner Banczynski?
Yeah, I have the same desire for in our goals to use the word eliminate instead of reduce, so that applies to goal 4 and goal 6.
Goal 4.
And then to
Is
any,
that right?
yeah, goal 4 and goal 6. How far are we going in terms of page numbers, Dwight?
We're up to, this is 10 through 12.
Okay, yeah. And then in all other cases, in the objectives and policies, I'm fine with reduce.
Okay, so goal 4, line 3 is a change reduce to eliminate. And then goal 6 has already been, well, we would reduce, we may not reduce, but eliminate the word, boy, this is not good. Strike the word or reduce. Is that correct? It's goal 6 on page 12, line 31. So how?
Yeah, I feel confident in my desire to have it reduce, change to eliminate in goal 4, which is page 11, line 3. And then for goal 6, I would prefer it to read that second reduce to read eliminate. So eliminate greenhouse gas emissions, or eliminate or reduce negative environmental impacts.
I think you mean strike or reduce. Isn't that what you?
Yeah,
Second
that.
Or the
that-
second reduce, that,
right.
what line are you talking?
I
about?
think the second reduce, I want.
32 on line
The
32.
32, yeah. The first statement, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to totally eliminate negative environmental impacts. This is more of a philosophical track that I go down here, so I'm not sure that it. Yeah, it could be a longer discussion. I don't feel as strongly there as I do for the second one.
Okay, so line 32, your motion is to change reduce to eliminate. And then on page 11, line 3, change reduce to eliminate.
That's right. And then I would be open to a broader discussion on any of these items, but in particular about reduce or eliminate the negative environmental impacts.
So it's been moved and seconded that those two amendments on page 11, line 3, and page 12, line 32. Is there further discussion?
I agree with that, and thank you for that.
Hearing no further discussion, if there's no objection, then those two amendments are adopted. Okay, so now, oh, sorry, Commissioner Lucis.
I was looking to maybe discuss line 31, kind of what Tracy had invited us to do. I think it might be best to just stick with reduce on that one. And the reason why is because I don't think it's possible to eliminate negative environmental impacts since we're already experiencing them. So I think at this point, we just have to reduce whatever else that we can and reduce what we're already experiencing. I'm open to discussion on that one and hear what others have to say, but depending on this discussion, I would move to stick with reduce for just line 31.
So is that pending discussion or are you moving now?
I'll make that pending discussion. I'd like to hear what others say and then I'll move.
So there's been a request to discuss amendments on line 31. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Benazinski.
So this is, are we talking about here eliminate or reduce negative environmental impacts associated with the consumption of goods, materials, and waste practices?
Yes.
And not just eliminate or reduce negative environmental impacts in total?
No,
So the former, the first.
The amendment is on line 31
Uh-huh.
to his proposals to strike the yellow eliminate and or those two words. That would be what what we're talking about.
Yes, and I guess when I read this, I think I stop at environmental impacts, like eliminate or reduce negative environmental impacts. My mind stops, but I think if I read it as eliminate or reduce negative environmental impacts associated with, then I might think about it a little bit differently. Does that make sense? Nathan, you're nodding.
Could
Yes, I see
could
what
we-
you're saying there, Tracy. Yeah, I get where there's kind of a little bit of a jumble there and it feels like a longer thought there.
sorry to cut you guys off. This is Commissioner Kadri. Could we possibly put eliminate and or reduce? Would that solve the problem? And dash or. I do think that eliminate is something that's important for us to put in there to show how serious we are about this. So I think and dash or would solve some of our concerns. So that would be my motion at this point, to keep eliminate and then put and dash or reduce on the first, on line 31.
Okay, there, Commissioner Lutzis, I'm going to give you personal privilege to speak before I rule on his motion.
Sure. And just discussing this a little bit. I don't know if there's a way that would maybe make it more sense to say something like reduce negative environmental impacts or reduce current negative environmental impacts and aim to eliminate future environmental impacts. I know that's a lot, but kind of structuring it in a way where reducing current and then eliminating future environmental impacts. Maybe that could be something for discussion, but in my mind, that seems to be a little more clear in that we want to eliminate what we can in the future and then just reduce or mitigate what we're currently dealing with.
So you, to repeat what you're alternately proposing is that the word would be reduce and what's the reduce and?
Maybe reduce current and eliminate future negative environmental impacts.
Reduce current and eliminate future negative environment. Okay, so that's an alternative.
I like that. I would second that proposition.
It's been moved and seconded.
Can I just ask a
Nathan.
question? Because I am confused here on the motions and seconded and the amendments to amend the motion. So I'm not keeping it straight. So I don't know if the clerk's keeping this straight or not, but.
Okay, there's only one motion now,
The-
and the other one was a discussion. He put it out for discussion. So the motion is Commissioner Kadri's motion, and I'll let you repeat that, Commissioner Kadri, just for the record.
My initial suggestion was to put eliminate and or reduce negative environmental impacts. But I do agree with Nathan's proposal. Nathan, could you repeat that? I was going to write that down so I can repeat that, but what was that you came up with?
Reduce current and eliminate future negative environmental impacts for line 31.
Yes, that's what you said. Does clerk have that?
Yeah.
That wasn't on my transcript. So Mr. Lutzis, can you please repeat the amended or the amendment, proposed amendment?
The proposed amendment would be reduce current and eliminate future negative environmental impacts in regards to line 31 on page 12.
If that's the case, then we're looking for a second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Kadri.
I second that. Yeah.
And the chair seconds too, if there's any questions. So there's only one motion on the table, and that is on line 31 as just stated by Commissioner Lutzis. And I believe our clerk is straight on that. And she nods yes. So is there any further discussion on the amendment on line 31, page 12? And if it's without objection, the amendment passes. Next, is there anything more through page 12? Seeing none, we're going to go 13, 14, and 15. Several yellows in here. If there's no motion on the yellows, they will be retained. Commissioner Lutzis.
Sorry about that. I'm looking on page 15, goal number 8, kind of what we were just discussing in the last one when it comes to climate change impacts on the community. Maybe if we were to stay consistent and say reduce current and eliminate future climate change impacts on the community. I think that fits a little bit more than eliminate or reduce, because with that or it sounds like one or the other. if you're reducing, well, we want to be, a little more aggressive on the issue, kind of like what Commissioner Banasinski was saying, which I agree with. So trying to fit that eliminate in where it makes sense and where we can actually do change going forward. So
it's been moved and seconded that an amendment on page 15, line 20, which is goal 8, will be the same amendment as just previously approved by this commission on the prior pages. All right. Is that okay? The clerk says she's got it. So now I believe Commissioner Condrey. Oh, you have nothing to say? Okay.
No, I don't. Thank you.
I thought I interrupted you. I apologize. Any further? Go ahead.
Can I just add maybe a point of clarification as you're considering this change?
Absolutely.
So with goals such as this, where we're talking about community resilience and mitigation and adaptation to climate change, we could flip off greenhouse gases today and we're still going to have impacts for decades to come. So when we're talking about mitigation and resilience, we're talking about setting goals and strategies to help our community cope with the changes that we already can't do anything about. So I would just keep that in mind when we could flip a switch today and turn them off, and that's not going to eliminate the impacts to the community on, for decades to come. So as you're kind of debating these words here, I would keep that in mind just for, the previous changes make complete sense. We can eliminate those, but when we start talking about impacts that are already going to be happening, just keep that in mind.
There further comments on our staff's analysis or the amendment? See none, so clerk will call the roll.
Okay, on the motion to address line 15 or yes, address goal number 8 to be written in the same manner as the previous motion to reduce current and eliminate future negative environmental impacts. Chairman Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Quadri.
Aye.
Commissioner Benishinsky.
I'm going to abstain from this one.
Commissioner Lutzis.
Aye.
Commissioner Wyckoff.
Aye.
With the majority in favor, the motion passes.
You have to call everyone. I'm sorry, but he
I'm
doesn't
sorry,
get
Mr.
He
Vanderland.
doesn't get a free pass.
Commissioner Vanderland, you get to be in the hot seat too.
I should have just abstained. Aye.
Oh, the motion passes.
Motion passes 4-0 with 2 abstentions. Okay, so that is line 20 on page 15. Is there any further amendments or discussion?
I don't think Commissioner Vanderline abstained. I think he was joking. I think he then said aye. I just want to make that clear for the record.
You did say, okay, so that
I thought
I got it. Okay, so the vote is a 5
ayes.
5 ayes and 1 abstention. Thank you. Someone here can count. Thank you. It's just,
As long as it's on my hands.
that's what they are here. So, all right, any further amendments through page 15? Seeing none, we're going to move. I stand corrected. Commissioner Benintzky.
I would like to go back to policy CA 7.1.3.
On what page and line number?
Oh, sorry, yes, on page 14. It's under goal 7. This was a point raised in our public comment. And so the idea was that we are purchasing these properties, structures, not simply to protect other structures, but also to protect sensitive ecological areas, which is something that I agree with. So I would move to have it read, where appropriate, purchase, I would say properties rather than structures, or I don't know, structures. Where appropriate, purchase structures in hazard-prone areas such as with persistent flooding to protect critical habitat and to protect structures from future damage inflicted by climate change impacts. And then the second sentence remains as is.
All right, so
For the clerk, would you kindly repeat the motion?
Sure. I move to have policy CA 7.1.3 read, where appropriate, purchase structures located in hazard-prone areas such as with persistent flooding to protect critical habitat. It's really the only change there. And to protect structures from future damage inflicted by climate change impacts. The rest would remain. Prioritize properties with exposure to repetitive losses or where purchasing may protect a critical habitat and reduce future climate impacts.
okay, so the motion is on line 14 after the word protect to insert critical habitat and. Okay, it's been moved and second for this amendment on line 14, page 14. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Lutzis.
Yes, really quick. Debbie, maybe you could answer this question for me, which I think would maybe help me. But when it comes to the first line there in 7.1.3, purchase structures, is there a reason why we couldn't say purchase properties and then refer to structures later on?
You see Richard studying this, so.
They're reading, our staff are reading seriously over at the table.
Because I'm just thinking out loud here. When we do make these purchases in these prone areas, wouldn't we be purchasing the property and not just the building itself?
I'm not seeing anything specific to why it couldn't be property or structures as I'm rereading it. Yeah, I saw that. The only thing as Nina was just pointing out, goal 7 is specific to infrastructure resiliency. So I'm wondering if structure is being used to tie it back to infrastructure.
If I may, I think the statement that you can't purchase structures without purchasing the property is probably, unless you buy the right to improve the property, there's no other way to do that. So I would be more keen on changing structures to property.
Or I don't know if could we just add properties and structures?
We could do property in line 13, the first line, and then in 14, it refers to protecting structures on those properties. And that makes sense to me, at least, purchasing the property and then referencing to protect the structure.
Commissioner Benezinski.
This is actually, Nathan, I'm glad you brought that up because I was wondering for this policy, whether we were really doing it to protect those structures or if we were doing it to protect structures nearby. And I didn't bring it up because I didn't think that in the end, it impacted my thinking about this, but I just bring it up for discussion.
Commissioner Vendeling.
Yeah, I'm a little confused about what our goal here is. Are we looking to indemnify property owners against damage resulting from climate change? Or are we looking to protect critical habitat?
Well, this particular objective would be to support resilience of public services, utilities, and infrastructure from climate change impacts. And so and by, we're including, I think, properties that are subject to flooding, things like that, but we're also talking, any public infrastructure and structures as well. But that could improve, that would protect roads, for instance.
That
From
makes
things
sense to
such
me,
as
but
like landslides and floods are risks that we've identified that are going to be aggravated by climate change. So the property may, we might want to get a piece of property, remove structures from it to protect it from, for instance, a landslide taking out right of way or a road or something like that. So, but back to your point, I don't know that there would really be an issue with changing structure to property because, it would be right. We'd be purchasing the property one way or the other to remove or mitigate the hazard that's being posed to the public infrastructure.
Thank you. The context is very useful there. I just didn't want to give the impression here that the city was moving toward indemnifying property owners for risk or damage resulting from climate change. But what we're saying here is that the city would benefit, and the citizens would benefit if we purchase property in order to protect that infrastructure. That I get.
Yeah, I think it would need a public benefit.
Is there any objection to what Commissioner Vandeling just said as far as the intent of the Planning Commission? Hearing none, would the clerk please make a note of Commissioner Vanderling's comments into the official record? All right, so it's been moved and seconded that the word structures on line 13, page 14, be changed to properties.
Oh, I'm sorry, we do need to back up. We have a motion on the table we need to address first, and the motion is to add the language to protect critical habitat on page 14, line 14 first.
This was just a friendly amendment, so it's up to Tracy, I guess, to accept or refuse.
I accept that friendly amendment. Do I need to do anything
No,
to
that's
change?
it. That's all
Okay.
you need to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for keeping me straight on that. Okay. And we had been going on for a while and I forgot about that. Okay, so now the amendment is clear. Is there any questions from the commissioners? It's what we're going to vote on. We're just voting on the change of that one word now. It's been a friendly amendment. Hearing no discussion, without objection, the amendment on line 13, page 14 is adopted. Any further amendments through page 15? Okay. So now we're going to go to page.
The amendment has been addressed, but now the main motion remains, which is to include on line 14 the language to protect or insert to protect critical habitat.
Now, she accepted that one-to-one as a friendly amendment, meaning that instead of what you, right? Oh, okay. Okay, Lau, I think.
Sorry, did I misunderstand the process? That may have been By friendly amendment, I thought it was
So
an
you did
addition.
amendment to amendment to an amendment is what you did. So you still want your original.
Yes, I would still like it to include to protect critical habitat. But by accepting the friendly amendment, I thought that just meant it would read where appropriate purchase properties located in hazard prone areas such as areas with persistent flooding to protect critical habitat and to protect structures from future damage inflicted by climate impacts.
Okay, would the clerk please restate that part of the motion?
Sure, the standing motion now is to incorporating the preceding amendment, add language on line 14, page 14, to read to protect critical habitat and to protect structures from future damage.
Commissioner Banzinski, is that your understanding?
Yes.
Okay. So the chair has corrected that the last vote was for an amendment to an amendment, which passed. So now we have the main motion, which is both amendments, the one that was just read to us, plus which we've already agreed to, the change of the words on line 13. So is there any further discussion on the main motion? Hearing none, the main motion is adopted without objection. All right, now I hope we are done through page 15. Sorry for that confusion. My pen was not writing fast enough, I don't think. Okay, so we're on to page 16 through 18. Are there any amendments? Okay, hearing none, we're moving on to pages 19 through 21. Are there any amendments? Commissioner Benziski.
I would like to have a discussion on page 20, goal 14. This is in response to another public comment. The comment was that we could be establishing a net ecological gain regulation for public development projects. This regulation should ensure ecological functions and values are not negatively impacted to a significant degree by public development. Furthermore, public development should seek to restore and support adjacent ecosystem functions when feasible. No ecological restoration is feasible in the immediate vicinity of the development. Meaningfully invest in and support ecological restoration elsewhere in the city scale to the scope of the development. I'd like to have a discussion about how that compares with, I think what that was in response to was our current policy CA 14.1.5, which starts on line 24.
Is there a comment from staff?
So if we can clarify, so
Yeah.
you're referring to policy CA 14.1.5, and you are feeling that this is not a sufficient response to public comment, and I'm looking for I'm trying to go back and look at public.
Oh yeah, that's a good
Comment.
point. We should reference that. Let me see if I can find it.
We can kind of understand the context.
Yeah. I think the public comment was attempting to get at this idea of trying to shift our mindset from viewing the land as the value of the land as primarily based on what development we can put on it to shifting our mindset to like the value of it being in large part how it supports our human health because of its ecological function. So I think that was the intention.
Oh, if that be the intention, then let there be light. Well, that it happened. It's not just our intention, but they did turn on the lights. So maybe it's because they're worried about us not being able to read our document. Anyway, so what do you have an amendment to propose? Well, you have to, I can't do a side.
Yeah, I was just hoping to discuss where the commission was on this topic.
Okay, so-
I'm not feeling ready to make an amendment.
Okay, so the discussion is on the issue of land value being development versus human and health, to support human and health.
So I think Richard's just been doing some checking to see when this comment was added. This was added, Richard, after the May draft based I think on Commissioner Banazinski's comment. So this was added related to a planning commission comment, but I think now what you're saying is based on the comment heard this evening's comment.
Yes.
Yes, the comment heard this evening, then you were asking whether this particular policy should be amended. This particular policy is specifically for public development projects as well, just to clarify that. Yeah.
Okay. Reading it again. Was any further discussion? There's no motion on the table. Unless the clerk wants to let me know I screwed up again. Oh, see, she's smiling. It really is that we are a little more fun, aren't we? And we're not done yet. All right, so is there seeing no motion, we're gonna move on.
This is Commissioner Cartery. I'm looking at goal 15, and this was previously changed based off of a motion that I had made. But after listening to Mr. Dakota Rash, I'd like to remove the continued growth part. And my motion is to say support and encourage growth of a resilient and green local economy instead of the continued growth part. So what I'm trying to say is that, so my motion at this point would be support and encourage the growth of a resilient and green local economy.
Okay, as soon as the clerk has figured out what can be written into the minutes, I'm going to ask her to repeat what's been said as a motion.
The motion on the table is to look at goal 15, line 8, and to remove the words continued growth and replace with support and encourage growth of a resilient and green local economy.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, as read by the clerk, there's been a motion and seconded to insert and amend line 8 as stated. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Beninzinski.
I'm wondering if this is for the commission and for you
Yeah,
too.
just speak
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry. I'm moving away from the mic. I am wondering if even the presence of the word growth suggests like that I think the point that Dakota was making is that we have viewed the land and the earth as something, and I guess our economy is something that could just continually grow, but that growth is the measurement of prosperity and success, rather than a more kind of like circular economy where we're not actually focused on growth. So I am wondering if it could be something more like support a resilient and green local economy, if that would be more kind of getting at the heart of the issue. This is a question that I have.
I think that's more direct and makes a little more sense and probably easier to read as well. So I'm okay with that. Thank you.
So that's a friendly amendment, changing your original, you're accepting that as a friendly amendment.
That is correct. I am accepting that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so he's accepted that as a friendly amendment. So the main motion now would read.
Commissioner Beninzinski, would you please restate your amendment?
Yes, I move to amend goal 15 to read support a resilient and green local economy.
Then I second that.
Okay, so it's been the new amendment has been moved, and it was a friendly amendment was accepted by the proposer of the first amendment. So would the clerk be so kind to read what is in the record that will end up in the minutes if we pass this?
Yes, so the plan is to, or the motion is to amend goal 15, line 8, to remove the word support continued growth and replace with support a resilient and green local economy.
Okay, everybody is shaking their head yes, that is what they understand to be the amendment to the comp plan before us. So if there is no further discussion, is there any further discussion? Without objection, the amendment is adopted as stated by the city clerk, meaning the clerk of the planning commission. But she is the city clerk, so she's kind of confused tonight. She's not, we are.
Yeah, I don't
we
think
are.
she's confused.
I see, I knew she was listening because she started to shake her head as soon as I got to that. Okay, so any further through page 21? We snuck onto page 21 there. So we're going to turn the pages. And so before we get to all the icons and supplemental stuff, we have page 22 and 23, which has substantial agreed upon read amendments. If there's any discussion or proposed amendments to pages 22 or 23? Hearing none, seeing none, we will move on now to pages 24 through 26. Which what I see is completely strike throughs, correct, staff? Okay, so that's gone, and you replaced it with something, is that? Oh, right, okay. That's why I wanted staff to clarify. So so this was all replaced by the pages that we just agreed to. So since this is all red line, let's go through to the bottom of page 28, if there's no objection. And we'll move to page 28. And that would be, and 29. Now, so the blues is just correction to create specificity for those references.
Yes, I think additionally, there are some hyperlinks in there, so that might also contribute to those blue areas.
Great. I bet you they only work if you don't read, they aren't there on a computer screen. That if I push them right now, they don't seem to, oh, they don't do anything. Okay, hearing no discussion to okay, climate. So is that before us, page, the climate action, oh, the element, the public, that's the public comment, right? Okay. So that goes just to the record. Is there any further discussion on the items on the public comments that we have not addressed, or don't have to make a comment, but I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to. One first is to go ahead.
This is just a comment, just for the record. You've heard me say it in past meetings, and I know that we're all on the same page of wanting to do this with expediency and urgency and as fast as we possibly can. So I think our hearts are all in the right place, and I look forward to supporting you all by agitating for the money that you need to do this quickly. So I really do. I know we're writing in here. We're not writing in here dates that are as soon as I would like this to happen, but I am looking forward to working with you to make sure that you have the funding that you can do this faster than we've written.
Now to restate the instructions from our key staff member who knows everything, Debbie, that because of the law that says that we can only amend the comp plan once per year, we're going to put all of these elements that we're working on and that we will finish this year into one proposal to the council so that it would be one amendment. Is that correct? Or did I misunderstand that?
That's correct. That is correct.
Good, okay. Wonderful. So if there's no further comment, then is there a motion to adopt all changes to the climate action element that the commission has proposed, and to refer it to the city council for action? Is there a motion?
Don't move.
It's been moved and seconded to refer this element to the city council for action when appropriate. Clerk, call the roll, please.
On the motion to adopt all changes to the climate action element that the commission has proposed and to refer this to the city council for action, Commissioner Lutzis,
Aye.
Commissioner Quadri,
Aye.
Commissioner Berechinsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Vanderland,
Aye.
Commissioner Wykoff,
Aye.
Chairman Thompson.
Aye.
All in favor, the motion passes.
And may be it noted that it was passed by unanimous vote of the Planning Commission. And we look forward to the opportunity to bring it to the City Council sometime in the future when our staff has said it's time to go. Any, okay, so now I gotta look at my. That's not. Staff have anything else that they wish to bring forward to us tonight?
No.
Short and sweet. Is there anything for the good of the order? Commissioner Wykoff.
Am I remembering dates correctly, that the next meeting would have been the 4th of July, which is on a Tuesday, and we're.
That's correct. We already moved to eliminate 4th of July. No, eliminate the meeting, cancel the meeting on that day. So our next meeting will be on July 18th.
Yes.
Commissioner Bell.
Remind us what's next on our calendar, what's coming up in the near future.
Could you please use your microphone, Commissioner Vanderland?
I'm sorry. Ask staff to please remind us what is on our docket coming up in the near future.
It will be bringing back a revised public facilities element based on the changes that you suggested, and bringing back a revised public utilities element. You haven't seen goals and policies yet, so that would be the next item. And then when you get through that, I believe it'll be the economic development sub-element.
Thank you.
So those first two items will start showing up on July 18th for us to work on.
I'm hoping so, yes.
How's your new hire coming? When are we going to celebrate this big moment?
His first day is Monday.
Yay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, it is now 8:21 and the Planning Commission meeting for tonight is adjourned.
Good night, everyone. Take care.
Good night. Thank you all.